Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and record this, and I'll upload it to YouTube and post the link in Blackboard just in case anybody wants to look back at it later. I'm gonna go over the second half of Module 7, and we'll probably just conclude it as soon as I get done with the lesson, unless I might give it a few minutes just in case you guys think of any questions. But as we go, if you have questions, you can go ahead and unmute yourself and ask the question if you have it. And then if you have any other questions, you can ask those at the end. All right, everybody ready?
Yeah.
Ready.
We did completing the square last time. Like I said in class, not a lot of people's favorite, completing the square. We're going to do quadratic formula today. People tend to prefer that to completing the square. Quadratic formula, rational solutions. Rational solutions just mean these are going to come out as numbers that are not long decimals. They'll come out like 5 or -7 or something like that. First example, 9v squared minus 30v plus 25 equals 0.
Audio.
Going, man. He is going.
And then mute it.
You guys might mute yourself if you think you might be talking during the lesson. So with the quadratic formula, you've got to first set it equal to 0, which on a few of these it's already set equal to 0, so you won't have to do anything there. Next, you'll want to label A, B, and C.
Everyone.
Hey, Chris, you're muted, but I think I can hear you. I don't know. Is there another computer in there?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Is there another computer in the room?
Yeah.
Okay, make sure you guys, are you guys in the classroom?
Yeah, because we didn't know about
We
this.
missed you today, man.
We didn't know about your little
and
cold
the announcement?
symptoms.
Okay.
I hate this.
But you might mute your computers while we're going over this if you might be talking during class, during the lesson. So label A, B, and C. A is going to be the number in front of the squared term. So if it's x squared, A is going to be the 9. If it's your V term or your X term, B is going to be whatever number's in front of that. In this case, -30. And your C is going to be 25. And then you're just going to plug those into the quadratic formula, which is -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So it might seem kind of involved, but it's a lot more straightforward than the completing the square was that we went over last week. So once you've got your a, which is 9, your b, which is -30, make sure you include the signs on those. And then your c, which is 25. So we've got -b. And by the way, you're going to put, with the -b part, you're saying there's a minus in front of whatever b is. So in this case, a minus in front of -30. Plus or minus. And then on the inside of that, we've got b squared. So since b is -30, we're going to square that. Minus 4 times a, which is 9, times c, which is 25. All of that over 2 times a, which is 9.
Hey, can you hold up so I can write the notes
Sure.
on the top a little bit? Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. Is there anybody else in the classroom there with you guys, or just you two?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, about 7 or 8 people.
Oh man, you guys didn't see your emails, huh?
No, we're just dedicated.
There's
Could be
other
extra
words
credit.
for that.
Did somebody come and unlock the room, or was it already unlocked?
It was already unlocked. Yeah, I should have known something was up because it's already unlocked, and usually you don't show up to the last minute.
That's unusual. Okay. So so here at the front, we've got the 2 minuses in front of the 30. That makes it positive. Negative 30 squared is 900. Four times 9 times 25 is 900 also. Then on bottom, we've got 18. (900 minus 900), 0. 18 on the bottom. So the square root of 0 is just 0, and you wouldn't say 30 plus or minus 0. You just say 30. 30 over 18, you do want to reduce that. Here we can reduce this by 3. We can reduce it by 2. We can reduce it by 6. And you just want to reduce that as much as possible. Okay, make sure you guys holler if you have any questions on these. You doing all right, Chris?
No.
No? Any questions on any of the stuff there that we did
I
there?
just wish I would have been on sooner where I can catch when you first started talking about it. But
Well, I mean, you didn't miss much. You just start out with, what we've got there, label A, B, and C.
Okay.
And then this formula, that's the quadratic formula, negative B plus or minus, all that stuff. And if you've got A, B, and C, what's that?
You still set a 0? Is that what you did up top?
Yeah, set equal to 0. And then once you've got it equal to 0, A is whatever's in front of the squared term, B is whatever in front of the variable term, and then C is the constant.
Okay.
And as long as you guys followed, the plugging in the numbers and then how that worked out, we'll go on to the second one. All right, so 4t squared minus 2t minus 3 equals negative 6t. Quadratic formula, we're gonna set it equal to 0. So on this one, we've got something that we'll do for that first step. The last one was already set equal to 0, so we didn't have to. Here, we're gonna add 6t. I'm gonna put it underneath the 2 since they're like terms. So we've got 4t squared plus 4t minus 3 equals 0.
Label.
Label A, B, and C. What's A here?
4.
Positive 4.
Positive 4, that's your A. Your B is 4 also. And then is your C 3 or negative 3?
Negative.
Negative.
Negative. Make sure you guys include those signs when you're labeling. And then we're just plugging into the formula. I'll write the formula out again. Negative B plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC all over 2A. And by the way, on the bottom, that's 2 times A. Underneath the radical, it's 4 times A times C. All multiplying there. So we've got a minus in front of B, plus or minus. B squared is 4 squared minus 4 times A, which is 4, times C, which is -3. All over 2 times A, which is 4. And one thing I want to highlight here inside the radical, we're multiplying all these things, you know, the -4 times 4 times -3. Negative times a negative is a positive, right?
Yes.
On the last one, just to go back up, we just had 1 minus in the middle. So 1 minus stays minus. Here though, if we've got the 2 minuses, this minus and minus, means we're gonna have, I'll go ahead and write this out. Still -4 on the outside, plus or minus. The 4 squared is 16. And so the next sign though, we had those 2 minuses. So that's gonna be plus. I'll go ahead and highlight that. So the 2 minuses turns into a plus. And then you just take 4 times 4 times 3. Ooh. 48. And then on bottom, we've got 8. So just continuing this on, only thing we're going to do is put together the numbers on the inside of that radical. So -4 plus or minus square root of 64. Ooh.
Eight. Oh, what happened? There you go.
Over 8. So this one will work out just a little bit different from the last one. -4 plus or minus, that's square root of 64 turns into 8. Over 8 on the bottom. And so on the top of this, the -4 plus or minus 8, this is actually 2 operations. -4 plus 8 is 1 operation. -4 minus 8 is the other operation. So I'm going to go ahead and do both of these since these are like terms. I'll go ahead and write that too. Like terms. So what we're going to do, -4 plus 8 over 8. And then we'll also do -4. What's the other one? Minus 8 over 8. So we're going to get 2 different answers on this one. Hopefully everybody follows where that came from.
I'm pretty confused. Can you go back up a little bit?
Sure. Do you follow up to this point?
I need just up a little bit more. Like right there. Perfect.
Okay. Well, all we did from there, we just added the 16 and the 48. Underneath the radical turns into 64. Square root of 64, just like if it was the square root of 25, that would turn into 5. Square root of 64 turns into 8.
Okay.
And then this is really, in the quadratic formula, you've got 2 operations that are going on up top. You've got plus and you've got minus. In a lot of cases, the number in front of the plus minus and the number out after the plus minus won't be like terms. One might be -4, the other might be a square root. You can't add a radical and a whole number. But here, both of these are whole numbers, -4 and 8, so we actually go a little bit farther. In some cases, you'll just stop here. But -4 plus 8, we can actually simplify that. -4 minus 8, we can simplify that. So on this first one, we get +4 over 8. -4 plus 8 is 4. And then 4 over 8 reduces to 1/2. On the right over here, what's -4 minus 8?
-12.
-12 over 8. And then we can reduce both of those by 4. Okay, so we end up with two different, excuse me, two different answers on this one. 1/2, -3/2.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I don't understand. After the like terms, you
Uh-huh.
have -4 + 8/8, then you have -4 - 8/8. How'd you come up with those two?
Well, this is sort of the first time you guys are seeing this, but this plus minus, this is two different things.
Okay, okay,
One is plus, the other is minus. It's just sort of condensed in the formula. But if they end up being like terms, like 4 and 8, then you do actually have to do the operations. You have to do -4 + 8, and then -4 - 8. Does that make sense?
no,
So,
Well, let me do it like this. Imagine that there was no minus there. Can you see that?
yeah,
-4 + 8 would give you 4, right?
right,
So that's an operation we can work out. If we just had a minus there, -4 - 8, that's an operation we can work out.
right,
So this is just, when you've got the plus and minus, it's just two
Okay.
different operations that you can do.
okay, that makes more sense.
In some cases, we'll stop there because, if you had, let me write over here. If you had -4 plus or minus the square root of 7, these aren't like terms that we can put together. So you would just stop if it was like this,
Okay,
and you'd leave it. This is really two different answers, but we can't simplify it anymore.
okay,
But with the adding the 8 and then dividing, we can get to 1/2 and then -3/2. So on these ones, we have to go a little bit further.
okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, so next section, quadratic formula. This one's irrational, level 1. Irrational just means we're gonna have a decimal that goes on and on and on and on and on. We're not gonna put in a decimal answer here, but that would be the decimal answer if we were putting it in. Here we'll end up with one of those, like I talked about with the 4 and the square root of 7, that we can't simplify. But the process, we're going to do several of these. The process just continues the exact same way. We're going to set it equal to 0, label A, B, and C, plug it in. So adding 6 here. Then we've got our A is in front of whatever the square term is, our B, and then our C. So I'm not going to write the formula out this time, but it's -b, so a minus in front of 15, plus or minus b squared minus 4 times A times C. Ooh, all over 2 times A. And by the way, don't forget the bottom part. Sometimes I see people get, you guys might mute yourself. The mute is on the bottom left in case anybody's looking for it. But sometimes people get really bogged down with the top part of it and they forget about the bottom, the 2A. Don't forget about that part. So -15 plus or minus square root of 225. And by the way, we've only got one minus here. So we're going to have a negative and then 4 times 5 times 11. Over 10.
minus 220. Minus 10. Okay. Yeah.
So this is going to be the square root of what? Well, that's pretty easy. Just 5.
Yeah.
Over 10.
Oh, I see.
Okay. I see.
And then on this one, well, let me go ahead and stop there. On the last one, we had on top like terms. Here we don't. 15 and square root of 5, we cannot put together. And it might seem like we can reduce all these by 5, but this is not really 5. If you put that into a calculator, you get, I don't know, 2 point something. But unless everything's divisible by 5, don't divide by 5. This one is not really 5. So this is as far as we can go on this. Again, the top are not like terms. The top are not like terms, so we can't put them together like we did with the -4 and with the 8 on the last one. Okay, next one's pretty much the same. 3y squared plus 12y plus 4 equals y. Gonna set it equal to 0. And we've got 3y squared plus 11y, 12 minus 1, plus 4 equals 0. Make sure you label A, B, and then C. So then we've got negative B plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4 times A, which is 3, times C, which is 4. All over 2 times A. Here we've got 1 minus, so that's just going to stay minus. And then 4 times 3 times 4, 48.
Plus minus.
Over 6, so 121 minus 48. So negative 11, all I'm doing is putting together the things underneath the radical. So 121 minus 48 is 73 over 6. Not like terms. By the way, this will come up later, but you do want to check to see if there's any squares in there. Squares, 1 squared, 2 squared. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 16, 25, 36. Really, you just have to go to about half. And you can see if any of these go into 73. 73 divided by 36, that doesn't work. 73 divided by 25, that doesn't work. 73 divided by 16, divided by 9, divided by 4. None of those go in. So this is simplified. Later on, we'll see some ones where a square does go in, and we can simplify this just a bit. So for example, I'll just give you a little quick example. If it were the square root of 50, as opposed to the square root of 4, you guys all know that's 2, I'm sure. Square root of 50, not so nice, but you could write the square root of 50 as the square root of 25 times the square root of 2. It has that 25 in there. So if you made it square root of 25 times the square root of 2, we could simplify it, that 25 into 5 and make that 5 square root of 2. We would want to do that if there was a square in 73. 25 doesn't go into 73, neither do any of these others, so we can't simplify it at all. Next section, quadratic formula, irrational level 2. Two y squared minus 2y minus 10 equals 1. Label A, B, and C. A is going to be 2, B is going to be -2, and C is -11. Make sure, excuse me, make sure you include the signs with your labeling. So we've got -B, and you might be tempted to just put -2, but -B means you've got a minus in front of whatever B is. You've got a minus in front of -2. This is what -B should look like. Plus or minus B squared, so -2 squared, minus 4 times A times C. All of that over 2A. So at the front there with those 2 minuses, that turns into a plus, so +2, plus or minus. And this is another one, this -2 squared, make sure it's -2 times -2. This should always come out positive at the front and side. So that'll be +4. And I mentioned before, when you've got 2 minuses, so you're multiplying 2 minuses, really, this is gonna be plus in the middle. And you can just go ahead and multiply 4, 2, and 11.
Eight, 88.
And then 4 on the bottom.
Over 4.
So 4 plus 88.
Is 92.
92. Over 4.
Over 4.
Okay, so just like the last example I showed, you do want to check to see if there's any squares in there. And you only have to go halfway to 92, so roughly around, 46. But hopefully you can make a list of squares. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. What's the next number here? Anybody?
9.
9. So 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4
16,
squared, 5
25,
squared,
36, 49.
49. And like I said, you only have to go to about half. So even 49 we could toss out, but about halfway, and then check these numbers, see if any of them go into 92. 92 divided by 36. I'm going to try that on the calculator here. Doesn't come out nicely. 92 divided by 25. Nope. 92 divided by 16. Nope. 92 divided by 9. Nope. And 92 divided by 4. This is going to work out. 92 divided by 4 equals 23. Okay, so let me know if there's any confusion where the squares numbers came from, where the 4 and the 23 came from. Just dividing it. Not 4 is a square that goes into 92. So what we're going to do is we're going to write 2 plus or minus. Instead of 92, we're going to rewrite it as the square root of 4 and the square root of 23. The square root of 4 and the square root of 23 multiply to be the square root of 92. So we're just simplifying this. We're not really changing it. And then all over 4. Anybody know the square root of 4?
2.
2. So this simplifies to 2 plus or minus 2 square root of 23. Don't forget about the bottom. And then all these numbers on the outside, not including the radical, but if the numbers on the outside can reduce, you will want to do that. Can we reduce those?
Yes.
By 2?
Half.
Yeah, if all these reduce, if all 3 of these reduce, then we'll go ahead and do that. So if we reduce by 2,
By 2.
then we end up with 1 plus or minus 1 square root of 23. I'm just going to write as square root of 23. Hopefully that doesn't throw anybody. You know, just like if it was 1x, we just put x. 1 square root of 23, we can just write square root of 23. And then on bottom, 4 reduced by 2 is 2. Okay, so I'm going to recap a little bit of this one. So we did all the stuff like normal, set equal to 0, label A, B, and C. We had the 2 minuses there that multiply to be a positive. Got a 92 in there. So you do want to check just with your square roots. If this was just 92 without the square root, we wouldn't mess with any of the square stuff.
Hey,
But if
Dave,
there's a perfect square in there, like 4, that's going to simplify to 2. If it was 9 in there, square root of 9 would simplify to 3. So 40.
Hey, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank on the squares. Can you repeat that to me?
Sure.
I'm sorry.
I'll put this in sort of like comic booky thought balloons. This is the thinking where these numbers come from. 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4, 3 squared is 9, 4 squared is 16, and so on. You can make a long list. We really just have to go to about half of the number inside that radical. Half of 92 is roughly about 46, or it is 46. So really, we don't need the 49. And then you just want to see if any of those are factors of 92. So you take, go ahead.
So we're just focusing on the 92, right?
Just focusing on the 92, right?
Okay, so if 2 can go into 92.
Not 2. We don't care about 2. We only care about squares. We only care about squares. So only these numbers, 1, 4, 9, 16. If any of those go in, then we want to do something. But if 5 goes in, we don't care that 5 goes in. 5's not a square that's going to make this simplify.
I guess I don't understand why we can't use 2.
Well, because you see what happened when we found out that 4 went in, right?
Right.
The square root of 4 simplifies to 2.
Okay.
But the square root of 2 wouldn't do anything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
If we had the square root of 2 and the square root of 46. 46 is not a square, 2 is not a square, so it's not going to do what the square root of 4 did. The square root of 4 simplified into 2.
Okay.
So it has to be one of these numbers, otherwise it won't do that. So we don't care if 5 goes in, we don't care if 7 goes in, we only care about the squares if it's a square root. We'll do another one of these. N squared plus 8n minus 11 equals -5. Nothing really new on this one. A, you might think a second about, but I doubt you guys will have any trouble with that. What's A on this one?
And
1.
One.
One.
or 1.
Yeah, that was the only sort of new thing on that one so far. Ooh. So we've got -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4 times a, which is 1, times c, which is -6, all over 2 times a.
Yeah, so that's 8 times 8 is 64. Minus, then make that a plus. That's 4 times 6 is 24. 24 minus 8 plus. Add those together, you get 88. 2.
64 plus 24, 88.
Yeah, over
2. And then again, you know, if it was the square root of 25, we wouldn't mess around with all this square stuff because the square root of 25 would just turn into 5. If it was the square root of 100, that would just turn into 10. Square root of 88, though, we do need to check to see if there's some sort of hidden square in there. So we're only going to go up to roughly about 44, half of 88. So the squares list doesn't need to be that long. 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared, 6 squared. 7 squared is going to be 49, which is higher than 44. So we don't need to include 49. And then you're just going to see if 88 divided by that number gives you a nice whole solution. So 88 divided by 36 doesn't work. 88 divided by 25.
Where's the calculator?
16.
Divided by 88.
16 doesn't work. 9 doesn't work. 4 does, though. 88 divided by 4.
That'll work.
22. Ooh. So 4 and 22. So all we're going to do is we're going to write the square root of 88 as the square root of 4 and then the square root of 22. Don't forget about the bottom there. We've got 2 on the bottom. Up top, that square root of 4 turns into 2. -8 plus or minus 2 square root of 22 over 2. And hopefully you guys can see that we can go just a little bit further. We're not going to reduce the square root of 22. I don't know what's the best way to put this, but it's not really 22 there. It's the square root of 22, which is, you know, I don't know, somewhere between 4 and 5. But not reducible by 2. But the rest of them, though, reduce by 2. And it's not always going to be 2. Maybe you'll be able to reduce those numbers by 3, maybe by 4 or something like that sometimes. By the way, what's the bottom gonna turn into? You guys can just show me the number.
1.
Right. Bottom's gonna turn into 1. So anytime you've got a fraction where the bottom is 1, you don't need to put the bottom. And then that 1 in front of the square root of 22, we don't need that either. And this ends up being the answer. By the way, I don't know exactly how the software is going to want you to put these answers in. Technically, this is 2 different answers. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but one answer is -4 plus square root of 22. The other one is -4 minus the square root of 22. So if it gives you 2 different boxes, one of them is -4 plus, the other one is -4 minus. I don't know that it'll do that. It may you should have a plus minus button that you can just tap.
It has one.
It does. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hopefully it's consistent and they don't kind of vary back and forth. Okay. There's some word problems.
Oh, great.
They're not bad. It's just a word problem, quadratic word problems, profit and gravity. Some of them they'll be talking about profits. Some of them they'll be talking about gravity. Quadratic word problems, profit and gravity. So there's 3 of them. Rocket launch is one of them. And I don't know if any of you are going to have to take college algebra, but this comes up in college algebra also. They'll give you some kind of trajectory of a rocket or a trajectory of an arrow, and they're asking how long till that arrow hits the ground. And the nearest 100th of a second. Pretty easy. You could probably do these without me giving you an example, but I figured I'd mention it anyway. The formula you're given, y equals -16x squared plus 124x plus 127. It's not any different than the other ones we've done, but the wording of it might be a little confusing. So when it's asking if it hits the ground, so if you think about the height, when an arrow hits the ground or when a rocket hits the ground, the height's going to be 0. Height of 0. So really all you're going to do is you're just going to replace y with whatever height at the point that we're curious about how long it takes to get there. If we wanted to find out how long it takes to get to a height of 100, we would make y 100. But we just want to know when it hits the ground. So basically all you've got to do is set y to 0, which is probably what you would do anyway, since that's typically what we've done on all these quadratic problems. But I just wanted to clarify that in case anybody was going to make it a little bit more complicated than maybe it needed to be. Okay, and as long as you guys followed what we did on the previous section, you should be all right here. I'm going to go ahead and finish it because on word problems, there are a lot of times answers that don't make any sense. So here we're talking about, I don't have the word problem in front of me, but they're going to be asking you about how long it takes to get to that point, how long it takes to get to 0. If you get an answer that's negative, it can't be negative unless a rocket's going back in time, which is unlikely. So you would discard the negative time and then keep the positive time. So set equal to 0, which we already did. We're going to label. We've got A, we've got B, and we've got C. So negative B plus or minus square root of B squared, which is 124 squared, minus 4 times A times C. We're gonna have some pretty large numbers here. And then 2 times negative A, or times A, 2 times A.
So 2.
So be careful with these numbers, 15376. And what's the next sign? Anybody?
I'm trying to work it. 1, 5, 3,
Positive.
6.
Positive. Yeah, we've got those 2 minuses. Then you can just ignore the signs and do 4 times 16 times 127. Let me know if you guys
8128.
get. Let me know if you guys get anything different. Yeah, 8128. On the bottom, negative 32. So one thing I'll do here that gonna move the minus up. Everybody follow that? If I move the minus up to the negative 124, it actually makes it positive. $23. Uh-oh. Okay, and this should come out nicely. 124 plus or minus, let's see, the square root of 23504. Maybe not. So 153.310.
Okay.
Over 32. So here I'm gonna throw out the negative part of this because we're gonna need a positive time. Like I said before, we can't have a negative time. So all I'm doing here now, this is a little bit different than what we did before. I'm going to go ahead and add those. So 277.3101 divided by 32. So we get 8.6659. We want to round to the nearest hundredth. Hundredth is that second decimal. You want to look at the number to its right and decide if that 6 is going to stay 6 or go up to 7. And since the number next to it is 5, that 6 is going to go up. This is the nearest hundredth. And you might add the little note for yourself to remove the minus for the word problem. With most word problems and quadratic formulas, the minus won't make any sense. Okay, let me know if you guys need any more time to write some of this stuff.
Eight. Profit.
So here we're looking for something different. We're looking for the maximum, so we're not looking for the point at which it hits the ground. I think we talked a little bit about the way quadratic graphs look. Quadratic graphs are U-shaped, either U-shaped like this, or they're flipped upside down and they're sort of more of like an N. So if you were to graph this, it would look something like this. And what we're looking for is this maximum point, the very, very top. The very, very top point or the very, very bottom point, these are called the vertex. And if you take college algebra, if you take calculus, you do a lot of stuff with maximums and minimums. We've got a formula for vertex that's a little bit different from the formula for a quadratic equation typically. When we're talking about maximums, we're talking about the vertex. So you're going to use the vertex formula. And so let me erase all this graph stuff. And let me move some of this. So the vertex formula is negative b over 2a. We're still talking about the same b that we determined, when we label these, the same a when we label these. So the vertex formula is negative b over 2a, and this is not going to make much sense, but f of negative b over 2a. And let me zoom in on this just for a second. So what we're going to do is we're going to work out what this is. Maybe this ends up being 5. I mean, you guys should be able to figure out what b is pretty easy. We'll put a minus in front of it. A, pretty easy. We'll multiply it by 2. So we'll work out what this is. And then let's say this ends up being 5. Then what we're going to do is we're just going to plug in 5 for every single x. That's what this really means. It's the function at that value. Okay? So if this ends up being 5, we're going to plug in 5, and then that'll tell us what y is, what the maximum y value is. Okay, Chris, you look stunned. Okay, anybody have questions on what I said there? So when we're talking about maximum, we need to know what that vertex point is. And we need to know, so if you've got y-axis, we need to know what y is, what the y is in that vertex. So go ahead and run through it. Got 7% left on my iPad, so hopefully it doesn't just cut me off, but I think we'll be all right. I've only had a few more examples. So A, B, here with the vertex, we're not concerned with C. We only need an A and B. So we've got, using this formula, got negative B over 2 times A. Negative B over 2 times A. So that's negative 1325 over negative 60.
No. Minus 1325 over 60.
Okay, so I'm gonna put, I don't know how many decimals the software would recommend that you use, but I'm gonna use at least 5 of the decimals. This actually goes on and on and on. 3 actually repeats indefinitely. Any questions on where we got the 22.08808333 from?
60 to 1325 divided by 60.
Right, that's it. And so again, I want to say this because there's gonna be some rocket ones. It's like, let me go back. So on the rocket one, when it talks about hitting the ground, you're just setting y equal to 0. But there's gonna be some where it asks what the maximum of the rocket is. So you're talking about the vertex again. You're talking about that highest point. So if you see maximum, whether it's related to profit, whether it's related to the rocket, you're talking about the vertex formula. You'll work out what that negative B over 2A is. And then this, we're going to plug back in. A little tedious, but not too bad. So we're gonna substitute for each X. Hopefully you guys can read that. Substitute for each X. So we've got Y equals negative 30 times 22.08333 squared plus 1325 times 22.08333 minus 8569. Everybody follow all that? It said maximum, so we used the vertex formula. We figured out what the first negative B over 2A is. That's this 22 number, and then we're plugging it back in. And then one thing on that too, make sure you square that 22 before you multiply the negative 30. You always have to square before you multiply. So let me write that, square first. So 22.08333 squared $487.67346. Like I said, 5 decimals and you should be okay. When we get to the end, we'll do this to the nearest hundredth. And then 1325 times 22.08333. 29260.41225 minus 8569.
Oh, boy.
14630.2038 Plus 29.
So a lot of numbers, but nothing we're doing here is complicated. We squared the 22, multiplied the negative 30. We multiplied the 13, 25, and the 22. And then multiplied these two. Now we can do all this in the calculator. So let's see, negative 14630.2038 plus 29260.41225 minus 8569 equals 6061.20845. And here we're doing the nearest.
Hundredth. So it's 21.
Yeah, nearest hundredth. You make sure you pay attention to how it's asking you to round, because it on one of them I can see here it's asking for nearest tenth. On some of them it may ask for the nearest hundredth. So make sure you pay attention to how it wants you to round. This is the hundredth. So you're looking at the number to its right. So this is going to round up to 21. Okay, so kind of messy, a lot of numbers, but just to recap the process again. Said maximum profit. If it says maximum profit, maximum height, you're using the vertex, which you've got your formula here, which really just means you're figuring out what this is, negative b over 2a, and then whatever that comes out to, which is here, you're plugging that back in. And then this is our actual solution. Okay, 5% remaining. So let's see, we've got 3 problems left to do. These won't take as long. Solve quadratic and linear systems.
Oh, good grief.
Y equals x squared plus 3x minus 29. A system is 2 equations. System can actually be more than that. It can be a bunch of different equations, but here, and what you guys will typically see is just 2 equations. So these are our 2 equations that we're given. Y equals x squared plus 3x minus 29, and y equals 2x minus 9. Let me just hide some of this. Let's say we knew, so ignore the top part. Let's say we knew that y was equal to 5. Then we could just look at this equation here and replace this y with 5, right? If we knew that y was equal to 5. We don't know that y is equal to 5, but we do know y is equal to 2x minus 9. So what we're going to do with these 2 equations is we're going to take what y is equal to. It's not 5, but we're just going to plug it in the other equation the same way we would 5. Y is equal to this, so we can plug it in. So instead of y equals x squared plus 3x minus 29, I'm going to put 2x minus 9 is equal to x squared plus 3x minus 29. Everybody follow that?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just solving it. There's a couple different ways we could solve it. You can always, if it's a quadratic equation, and this is quadratic. We've got the x squared there. If it's quadratic, you can always use the quadratic formula, set equal to 0, label A, B, and C. You can always do that. It's not always the fastest way to do it. So I'll try to demonstrate a faster way, but if you're not great at factoring, you can always fall back on the quadratic formula. So I'm going to subtract 2x. I'm going to add 9. So everything on the left now is gone. 2x minus 2x is 0. Negative 9 plus 9 is 0. So everything on the left is gone. Then we've got 0 equals x squared plus x. So 3x minus 2x is just 1x. So this is quadratic. We could use the quadratic formula. What would A be?
1.
1. B would be 1 also. And then C would be negative 20. You could do that, plug that into the quadratic formula and work it out and get the correct answer. You can also, so I'll say this, factor or use the quadratic formula. As long as you're okay with factoring, factoring is going to be a bit faster because factoring, you do the 2 parentheses. We know we got x and x. Ooh. Then we need 2 things that multiply to be negative 20 and then add to 1.
4 and 5.
4 and 5. We need the larger one to be positive.
Okay. 0 equals minus 4x plus 5. Bum, bum, bum.
So if you guys remember how these work out, you end up with the opposite of whatever you've got inside the parentheses. So x is equal to 4, x is equal to negative 5. And that's it. Yeah, so I'll just leave it at that.
That.
Okay, I got 3% left, so we'll see if we can get through this. Solving quadratic and linear systems level 2. Basically the same process, they just add a little wrinkle at the beginning. So we've got y equals negative 3x squared plus 11x plus 40. And then we've got x plus y equals 4.
Okay. What you want to do is x plus y equals that. So we need to move that. Get y by itself.
Get y by itself. Hopefully that's pretty easy. We're just going to subtract x. And then we're just doing the same thing that we did on the last one. All right, everybody follow that. Subtract x, you got 4 minus x. And then we're taking this part and plugging it in for y. Just as if y was equal to 5, replace y with 5. So now on the left, we've got 4 minus x equals negative 3x squared plus 11x plus 40. All right, I'm gonna have to pick up the pace here a little bit. My iPad's about to die. So setting it equal to 0. So subtracting 4, adding x. Oops, subtracting 4, adding x.
36, 10, 12. That's 3, 2.
So we got 0 equals negative 3x squared plus 12x plus 36. So there's a few different routes you could go with this. You could use the quadratic formula. A would be negative 3, B would be 12, C would be 36. And then hopefully you guys know how to work that out. The thing that I think that would probably be easier, anytime you've got an equation where everything is divisible by something, you can make it much simpler if you just divide everything by that thing. What can we divide everything here by?
3.
3. And if you divide it by negative 3, then we'll just have x squared at the front. So divide by negative 3. And again, you can use the quadratic formula if any of this is, slips your mind later on. So negative 3 divided by negative 3 is 1. X squared. 12 divided by negative 3 is negative 4. And then 36 divided by negative 3 is negative 12.
X squared.
Then we need two things that multiply to be 12. Negative 12, add to negative 4.
6 and 2.
6 and 2. The larger one needs to be negative.
Plus
So then what do our
2.
answers end up being?
Negative 6 and positive 2.
Close.
Positive 6 and negative 2.
Positive 6 and negative 2. It ends up being whatever the opposite of the signs in the factoring part. There's an in-between step. Maybe I can do that real quick. The in-between step is x minus 6 is equal to 0. X plus 2 is equal to 0. Add 6. Minus 2.
Sorry, I was thinking that I was thinking the bigger number had to be positive.
Yeah, no, the bigger number had to be negative on that one because the middle term is negative. All right, I think that's good. I got 1% left. Any questions on anything really quick?
Yeah, on the
Just have a
solid
quick question.
quadratic linear systems, at the very end, the answer was x equals negative 4 and negative 5. How come out it's not a positive 4? And
It is positive 4.
It is positive 4.
Will you be
Oh,
leaving
okay.
this recording up or?
I got you.
is it
Yes,
just-
I will.
Okay. Alrighty, thank you.
the tutoring hub, here I come.
Okay. I'll be there next week.
You're out.
Adios.
So it'll be in next year. Oh, there it is.
You're muted right now, David, if you didn't know.
Okay, thanks, Caleb. Aaron, did you say something?
Nope.
Oh, okay.
You're gonna be here next week?
I will be there next week, right? Okay. You guys in class look like you were having a good time. I hope you followed everything all right. Okay. All right. Anything else? Otherwise, I'll just go ahead and close this out, and I'll see you guys next week. Email me if you have questions. I'll try to help as best I can if I can over email. All right.